Hi, everyone who is joining. I'm out in Florida. I'm speaking at the Troop HR conference. If you're in HR, this is probably one of the most amazing conferences you can go to. I've been a member of Troop HR. Tracy, who is one of the founder, has created such an amazing community. But that's a side note. So I'm actually talking to all of you guys. I wish I could show you my screen, but it's literally my laptop propped onto two of my books and a box of tissue. So this is the sexy public speaking. But thank you so much for joining, everyone. Before we start, in the chat, please let us know your name, your company if you want, what city you're coming from. And if you can, turn on your videos because I know for me as a speaker, it helps me to see your beautiful faces. If you are watching this via live stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or X, we want you interacting in the comments in the chat as well. If you have any questions, if you have a book recommendation, a quote, we want you in the conversation. Let us know in the chat. If there's something that Nausheen or I say that resonates with you, let us know. Give a clap emoji, a heart emoji, all of that stuff. And I just want to remind you guys all who are new to this conversation, this is a micro-learning. Our community of 7 micro-learnings really focuses on helping give you the right size information. We want to elevate your career and your personal life through these small, short talks like this. This is not a webinar where you're passively watching us. We want you engaged in the conversation. And we want you to actually get something from these talks. We want you to take action, maybe 1, 2, 3 things after this call, whether it's to join Toastmasters like John, who was on this call earlier today before we got on, or maybe it's reading a book, or maybe it's subscribing to Nausheen's LinkedIn page so you can get her great content. Whatever it is, pick an action and take that action before the end of the day, right? Have a goal for yourself. In a year, I'm going to be doing a keynote at a conference, right? Or I'm just going to speak up in the next meeting that I have. Today's topic is on mastering influence, the power of confident speaking with Nausheen Chen. Recently, we had Jeff Harry on our micro-learning to talk about how to book gigs. And when I saw Nausheen on LinkedIn a few months ago, she had this beautiful fiery blue hair. I was like, it stopped my scroll because I looked at her and I was like, first, she's gorgeous. But second, I was like, I want to hear what she's talking about. And she was talking about how to speak confidently and how to master influence. And I was like, I want some of that. And so, I kind of think about my public speaking journey. For those of you that have followed me for a while, you know that I used to suffer from social anxiety. I am an introvert. The thought of public speaking, if someone had told me that I would be doing a keynote to 200 people, I would have told you, oh, you're insane. There's no way I would be speaking in public, right? Let alone speaking at a meeting, at my work. And so it took a while for me to get there. I mentioned this to a friend last week. I was like, the first step was just getting over my social anxiety of talking to people. And so what I did, I talked to my friend who was really good at just connecting with people. And I was like, how do you do it? How do you connect with people? And he was like, just talk to people. I mean, I know that sounds stupid, but just talk to people. And so he's like, start talking to kids. And looking back, that sounds a little bit creepy. This old lady just kind of coming up to little kids and starting to talk to them. But I went and I just, talked to kids on the street. I was like, hey, that's such a cute hat you have. And I would just start talking. And then I got a little bit more brave and I would go into, you know, uh, a grocery store. And I would start talking to cashiers. I would start talking to the people next to me, behind me. And I just kind of kept on practicing. And the more I talked, the more comfortable I got. Then I got into a career where I was client facing. And then as I climbed the corporate ladder, I realized I was expected to talk and to present. I was like, shit, that's scary. Public speaking is the number one fear for most Americans. So what did I do? I just kept on talking. I was talking to John earlier. He came on the call before everyone else did, and we just had a conversation. And he was kind of just talking about him transitioning from his career, his illustrious career as a chemist at Coca-Cola. And I hope you don't mind me sharing your story, John. But and he was just saying, and now I want to find my voice. And so I joined Toastmaster. I was like, that's so freaking awesome. Because part of it is just practice. It's about doing the things that scare us, doing it over and over and over again. And if I could be on stage doing a keynote, in June, I'm going to be speaking in Saudi Arabia. I'm going to be speaking in Barcelona. I'm going to be speaking in France. I'm going to be speaking in London. If someone had told this girl who grew up in Inglewood, California, in poverty, that I would be public speaking on the stage, I would have said, you're crazy. Because, like I said, like you and many of you listening right now, I was afraid of owning my voice. And this is why I wanted Nausheen on this call, because she has such an amazing story to share. And I hope someone on this call is able to speak up and hear and own their voice. So without further ado, let me pin Nausheen. Let me find you and your beautiful purple hair. I think when I first saw you, it was blue. Okay, let me pin you right now. Hi, Nausheen. So Nausheen Chen has transformed the lives of many, from entrepreneurs battling stage fright to executives seeking to command the boardroom. Her clients have graced the stage and platforms such as BBC, TechCrunch, and TEDx. She's leveraged and refined her speaking abilities to help build powerful personal brands and a lucrative career. Without further ado, round of applause. Hey, Nausheen.
Thank you so much, Lan. It is so great to be here. So exciting to be speaking to you and your awesome community. And just the way that you speak is a masterclass in
Oh,
how you should be speaking to relate to people and to resonate with audiences. So I loved hearing that. I loved being a part of that. Thank you.
I love that. And, before everyone got on, we had a conversation. I was like, are you an introvert? Because I'm an introvert. John was on an introvert because he came in earlier. And I think this is a key. You don't have to be an extrovert. You can be an ambivert, introvert. You could be afraid of public speaking and make it your career, right? As you have. So tell us, most people aren't born public speakers, right? I definitely was not a public speaker. I used to sweat. Like I used to literally sweat if I had to talk in the classroom. Like when the teacher raised, like, oh, can anyone speak? I would never raise my hand. And when I spoke, my voice would tremble. I would like start sweating. I was definitely not born a public speaker. Tell us about your story and how you learned to master the art of public speaking.
Sure. And I want to say, look at you now. It's awesome. You're unstoppable. So I could absolutely see all the years and decades of work that you've put in. For me, you know that annoying kid who would get up in front of the entire family and recite the most boring poem ever? I used to be that annoying kid. I've been in love with performing, entertaining for most of my life. I just took the long way around to making it my career. I was one of the youngest communication skills trainers at Procter & Gamble. Enjoyed that more than my actual job in marketing and PR. Never realized that I should be doing that for a living. Changed careers, became a filmmaker. I enjoyed speaking to my actors and getting the best performance out of them, and getting the CEOs who were speaking on camera for the first time, doing corporate documentaries, getting them to speak with ease and not in the stiff robotic way. I enjoyed doing that work more than actually making the films and documentaries themselves. There came a time where I was at a film festival in Tenerife in Spain. I was presenting my film to this room full of investors and producers. I had to get up on stage, do a 10-minute pitch about my documentary, and then play the trailer. I go, I do my pitch, I get this applause. And afterwards, I have Canal Plus coming to me, who are one of the biggest TV producers, documentary producers in Europe. And they come to me and say, wow, your pitch was great. It set up the entire documentary so well. We were so interested. And then your trailer kind of sucked. We are not going to invest in your documentary. We just wanted to come here and tell you we loved the way you spoke. And that was one of the first indications that perhaps filmmaking was not in my future and I should go towards what I'm really good at and what I really enjoy. I did gain expertise in speaking, but I did it through trial and error, through 17 years of speaking on any stage that I could find. But over the last year and a half is when I took a step back and aimed to distill everything that I had learned and stumbled into and done without understanding why I'm doing it this way, and distilled it into a system. And that's where I am now.
I love that. And can you, without kind of sharing maybe all of your secret sauce, what were some of the steps? Like, let's take it from the very beginning. And I'm going to use John as a role model because he's like just joined Toastmasters. And think about you, because it's hard because now you are a public speaker. You teach people how to do this worldwide. You have a course. But go back to the Nausheen who was like first getting on the stage or first speaking in a conference room at P&G, right? How did you go from zero experience to confidently speaking? Like, what were the steps that you needed to take?
In the beginning, I believe I was confident without having the skills to back it up. And I've observed this in a number of my extroverted clients where you go and you speak and you enjoy it, but are you actually any good? On my second day at Procter & Gamble, my boss asked me to do a presentation. My second day. And she was testing me, of course. I was up for it. I was really excited. I was like, oh yeah, she's picked the right person. I know how to speak. I'm going to go and present this thing in front of our agency partners. So I do the presentation. My heart's, of course, beating very fast. I'm nervous, but I get through it. And then later on, she tells me, yeah, not bad. Why were your hands going crazy? So that's how I got better bit by bit. Every event, every presentation taught me a little something that I could take with me to the next one and then to the next one. When I was in China, for example, I learned the hard way that Chinese audiences do not expect to participate and interact. I'm a very interactive presenter, so I ask questions, I crack jokes, and 3 minutes into my presentation, I asked, it was on filmmaking. I was a filmmaker at the time. So I asked, what was the last interesting commercial that anyone saw? Normally, you expect people to raise their hands and say, yeah, I saw this at the Super Bowl. I saw this here. No hands, no interest, poker faces. And it took me about 5 seconds to realize, okay, need to keep going, need to keep riffing. So I made a joke out of it and said, oh, okay, so no one's ever seen an interesting ad. No interesting ads have ever been made, right? And then people smiled and we kept the conversation going. But that was the lesson. Make sure that you adapt the way that you engage with different audiences, different cultural backgrounds, and be prepared for poker faces. That's pretty much how I learned through that trial and error cycle that I was telling you about. And now ended up doing 3 TEDx talks, and I coach people to speak on huge stages, huge platforms. And that's those are the shortcuts that I provide. So earlier you said without giving away the magic sauce. I'm very happy to give it away. I don't gatekeep. I talk about the system that I teach, and I also talk about all the different things that you can do in terms of mindset to conquer the nerves.
I am so laughing. Like literally when you were speaking, I was because the worst crowds are when they're just kind of staring at you like no response. It's so painful. And okay, I have a funny story to tell. So when I was first kind of going through corporate and I was trying like I had to do more speaking. And so I was practicing and I was like, okay, how can I practice without like getting fired, right? Like like you're a terrible speaker. And so my daughter was in kindergarten at that time. And I was like the teacher was looking for parents to read stories to the kids. I was like, I'm gonna do that because I'm gonna practice speaking. And I came in and I was like watching them. They're like, right? And these are kids, but I was sweating. And then it was that experience because when you're working with kids, you have to be like emotions. You have to get them surprised. You have to kind of engage them. You can't just be like, well, Sarah, Jane went up the hill and got the water, right? Because kids will tell you, this is boring, right? And
Yeah,
so I started, my first public speaking engagement was at my daughter's kindergarten,
that's awesome.
reading a book, right? But it's
Mm.
that like, I really like your identifying that you have to really speak to the audience. You have to do your research beforehand, know who's in the audience. One thing I could say from an introvert that was different because your experience as an extrovert, you want to be on stage. You want for the introvert, it's like, oh, that's not what I want to do. And what I realized was that you can't wait for confidence. You can't wait to
Mhm.
be ready to speak. You gain confidence by doing, and you get confidence by continually taking opportunities to speak, whether it's toasting your friend that just got married, or speak raising your hand to speak at your kindergarten, read at your kindergarten kids, class. You got to just keep on doing the reps in these smaller, low stakes situations until then, I've been in stages where I'm speaking to 1,000 people, right? But it's a gradual step up. So let's go back to what you said about mindset, because I think that's really
Mhm.
important. What's a mindset that you need to speak confidently, but also to public speak or, just be a confident speaker in general?
I love that you mentioned taking the action and then gaining confidence. So that was what my entire third TEDx talk was about: confidence or action, what comes first? Because I very often get clients saying, Nausheen, I want to speak on this podcast. I want to go and do a keynote. I want to launch my course and create videos, but I need to be confident first. That is essentially impossible. You have to take that first action scared. But what I do want to say is that just because you take action does not mean that you're naturally going to gain confidence as a result of that action. So there was this psychologist called Albert Bandura, and he did this very interesting experiment on how self-talk factors into self-belief and confidence. To create a picture of that experiment for you all, imagine that there are two people, they're playing Scrabble. We have confident Kathy and insecure Ian. Confident Kathy is very confident and sure of herself, and insecure Ian is not. Looking at the circumstances, imagine that they're both losing in some freak incident. They're both getting V's and X's and W's, and they're barely able to make any words. As they are losing, insecure Ian will tell himself, this is just me. I'm so terrible at this. I hate this game. I can't do it. Confident Kathy will say, okay, gotta try harder next time. All right, didn't do that one. Okay, I'm gonna try even harder. I'm gonna try harder. That's okay. She's not gonna ascribe the way that things are turning out to her own lack of abilities. In fact, she's gonna keep that faith in her abilities to handle difficult situations. Now, what if they're winning? you'd imagine that insecure Ian would be happy if he's winning. But no, he's going to start telling himself, that was pure dumb luck. I can't replicate that. That was just circumstances. Confident Kathy takes full accountability for the good and the bad. So when the good happens, she takes credit. She says, yeah, I did that. That was me. I made that word and I made that word and I'm awesome. She is creating this positive feedback loop for herself, where not only is she going and doing the action, but she's looking at the result and using that to either reinforce her self-belief and confidence or reinforce faith that she's going to be able to handle whatever happens next. And that's what I concluded as part of my TEDx talk. That it's not just that you can go and do the action and automatically gain confidence. You have to intentionally use the results of that action to feed into the next time you do a similar action or are in a similar situation. It's like playing Judge Judy with yourself and questioning the negative beliefs when you're about to do something scary. Really? Am I really bad? Am I really an imposter? Is it really going to suck that bad? I don't think so. I've done that other thing. That
Yeah.
didn't suck as bad. So I
Yeah.
can do this next thing.
I love that self-talk, right? Like of just, before you get on. But fear is a strong emotion. So Malheur in the comments says, I've been speaking for 20 years, but still have the nerves and the jitters before I go on stage and on camera. I still have
Mhm.
the fear of forgetting important stuff, right? And I totally get that, Malheur. I still get scared speaking on stage as well, right? But what are some tricks that you have? Because I think there's a lot of people who have that butterfly in their stomach before they get on stage. What are some, we're talking about mindset. What are some of the
Mhm.
tricks, advice you can give for people who are afraid of speaking?
Right. So reframing the nerves is a big one that I've seen work over and over. When I was asked to present to Twitch, that was the last time I remember feeling very nervous to the point where I wanted to back out. I felt dread. I felt like I was an imposter. The nerves were taking over. And I stopped and realized that I wasn't partaking the same medicine that I prescribe to my clients, where you have to understand something about your body and something that happens as a result of both fear and excitement. Your body produces the same physiological response, whether you're really excited about something or really nervous. Your heart starts beating faster. You get the sweaty palms that you were talking about. You start obsessing over the thing that you're excited or nervous about. You get butterflies in your tummy. And because the body produces the same physiological reaction, it's up to your brain to label that emotion. If you can label that emotion as excitement, if you can tell yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm just so excited that I get this opportunity to speak to these lovely people. I really care about the outcome. I'm not indifferent. And that's what's causing the excitement. It turns that negative emotion into something positive. And I have seen this work over and over with clients right before they need to go on stage, right before they need to go on camera. If they reframe the nerves as feeling excited, they show up smiling, show up with higher energy, they show up with positivity, and they don't let the nerves control them. Because Malheur is right. Every speaker feels nervous to different degrees, of course. Maybe the regular everyday workshop won't phase you if you're an experienced speaker, but going to the TEDx stage was absolutely nerve-wracking. Presenting to big companies where I feel like I need to perform and I need to deliver is absolutely nerve-wracking. Those are the times where you have to make sure the nerves don't take over. That's the difference between a great speaker and an inexperienced or average speaker. They both feel the nerves, but one doesn't let the nerves control them.
Can I give you a funny it's gonna lead into my next question.
Mm,
Uh funny tips or exercises that you do before you speak. So the feeling of nerves, I actually do like 10 burpees. Like I don't
hmm
it's like basically where you're kind of like jumping down and then I do like I kind of run in place because it actually tricks my body that the reason why my heart is beating is
hmm
because I've just exercised and it tricks
Yeah.
me. And I do the same thing that you had just advised of this feeling is excitement. It's not fear. And I get really excited. And then I have like a pre-speech ritual. I
Mhm.
first, I think the most important thing is prep before you speak,
Yeah.
right? Prep. So yeah, I know there's a fear, Malheur, of like forgetting, but if you kind of know your script, it's helpful. Like, um, I also pray. I have a breathing exercise. I meditate. So that's my ritual. Do you have any
Mm.
rituals that you use before you do like get on the TEDx stage or you're gonna have like a speaking to 1,000 people? What are some of the tips that you might have?
Yeah, and I love that you asked that question because we talked about mindset earlier, but this is a very actionable thing that you can do to control the nerves right before you need to go on camera or before you need to go on stage. So you're doing what we call warm-ups that warm you up and get you on that stage in a state where you've already gotten rid of the nerves. If you recall, and this is a question for all of you who are here, think of the last presentation that you did, client pitch, or even a video if you record videos. Very often, the first minute to 5 minutes are when your heart is uncontrollably fast. That's the time when you might use a lot of filler words, stumble over your words, say things too fast, and then things calm down. People tell me that once I'm in the flow, I'm good to go. The idea of warming up is to get rid of those nerves before you're actually on stage, before you need to perform in front of that audience, so that you're hitting the ground after those few minutes of feeling nervous and feeling jittery. There are 3 types of warm-ups that I recommend. And what I like is for everyone to look at all the things that are possible and then create a warm-up routine, a pre-game routine, or a pre-speech routine, like you said, Lan. Create one for yourself that works for you every time. There are physical warm-ups, vocal warm-ups, and expression warm-ups that you can do. So I can actually show them to you, Lan. Would you like to be my
Yes.
volunteer and we can do them together?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Do you
Awesome.
do the Peter Piper? Picked a peck of pickled peppers.
No, but that's a legit one. That's a
Yeah,
legit one to practice enunciation.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good one. So we start with physical warm-ups, and you mentioned that you jump, you bounce around.
Yeah, like
So
I'll do like jumping jacks.
jumping jacks, that's part of it. For physical warm-ups, if you're already feeling nervous, then I advise starting slower to
Mhm.
calm yourself down and then intentionally raising your heartbeat, just like Lan was talking about. So we start with just taking the arms and shaking them out. So just we're shaking out the stress a little bit vigorously. So we're letting the stress and the nerves leave our body. And I'd like all of you, if you like, you can do these with us. And
Oh,
then
actually,
take,
let me put this into gallery mode if you guys don't mind.
oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
So we've done the arms. Now,
Yes.
same with the legs. You
Mhm.
can do this standing up or sitting down. Just shake out one leg and then shake out another.
Yeah.
So we're just shaking them out at this time. And then let's start rolling the shoulders. We're looking for slow, smooth, fluid movements of the shoulders, full 360 movement. So really feel them moving around. And then reverse direction. So if you started clockwise, go anti-clockwise, and do that for about 5 or 6 shoulder rolls. And then let's do the same with the head. So again, slow, deliberate head rolls. Trace a full circle with your head. And if you're old like me, you'll hear neck cracks. You can
Oh yeah, I got a
ignore
lot
them.
of those.
And then again, let's reverse direction. So you started clockwise, let's go anti-clockwise. And just do a few of those. And you can see that these are designed to be slow and deliberate, and also just focusing on getting your muscles in your body to relax a bit and
Yeah, I feel
feel more
better already
loose.
just doing that.
Yeah.
Mhm,
And at this point, that's where you would do the jumping jacks. You
mhm.
could bounce in place, you could jump. I believe Tony Robbins jumps on a trampoline before he goes on stage. That's what's reported.
Yeah,
You can also, at this point, if you like listening to music, you can listen to your favorite song and dance a little bit and
yeah.
even sing if you like.
Mhm.
That's what's going to get the heart rate up. So that's the physical warm up segment of it. And then for vocal warm ups, the idea is to warm up your vocal cords so that you don't need to clear your throat. Because not sure if you know this already, but if you clear your throat too aggressively, you could actually damage your vocal cords.
Mhm.
And there are people that are in the habit of always clearing their throats before they start speaking, or even in the middle of their talks. So for vocal warm-ups, there are many, many types that you can do. I teach really simple ones. The simplest one is we take two fingers, we put them against our lips to feel them buzzing and create an sound and hold it for about 5 seconds.
Mhm.
So we can do it together. Mm.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, the fingers are nice because then you can feel your lips buzzing and you know you're doing it right.
mhm,
That's part one of the vocal warm-ups. Part two is you start the same way. And now I'd like you to open up your mouth into different vowel sounds. So we'll start with the fingers on the lips and we'll take the fingers away and open it up into an
mhm.
Okay, so 3 seconds on the and then we open it up into an and hold that for another 3 seconds.
Okay.
So
Mm, mm, okay.
yeah, and then we repeat that for all the vowel sounds. So that's where you would start feeling like your vocal cords are relaxing. The texture of your voice should become a little bit richer,
Mhm,
and ideally you will not feel the need to clear your throat.
mm,
And then part three are expression warm-ups. And this is very specific to being on camera or being on stage. The idea is to have fun, but to also prime your facial muscles and your brain to be a little bit more expressive. We take a sentence and we'll say it in different moods and styles. So give me a sentence that you like saying.
The Cat in the Hat?
What if that? Okay, what's the sentence? That sounds like
Oh, a
a
sentence, like a full sentence.
descriptor.
Oh,
Yeah,
shoot.
it could
A,
involve a cat in
a,
the hat.
a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step.
I like that. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And
Yeah,
you've just said that in a neutralish tone. So
yeah.
now I'd like you to say it as if you're really excited about it.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Right. And now I'd like you to say it like you're really upset because the person you're talking to refuses to take that first step.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Nice. You're quiet angry. I see. And now I'd like you to say it like you are delivering a punchline of a joke.
A journey of a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Nice. And last one, you're explaining it to a 2-year-old.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Nice. So the idea at this point is just to have fun with it, maybe even make yourself laugh a little and become a bit more expressive. So at the end of the day, what you really want to do is amplify your emotions, amplify your expressions, amplify yourself a little bit to be able to connect with the audience better. But that's the 3-part warm-up routine. It's like a laundry list of different things that you can do. And I'd love all of you to try it out, try different parts of it out, and see which exercises have more of an impact on your energy and the way that you're showing up in the speaking opportunity that you have afterwards.
I love this. And I think it's going to help so many people because before I started professionally speaking, I didn't know that I needed to warm up my voice. I would just go there and like my voice would crack and I'd blow my nose and it's just like coughing, drinking water. Um, it's like, it's those little things that you learn kind of on the way. So let's talk about some foundational kind of techniques, right? You kind of
Mhm.
talked about the warm up. Could you share some other foundational techniques that someone should master in order to speak confidently? Like you mentioned earlier about waving your hands too much, but
Yeah.
then there's basically the other people who speak who are just like,
Yep.
hi, I name, right? What are some of
I
the other
am ahead.
foundational things we need to know that people on these in this room needs to know to speak confidently, whether on stage or in a meeting?
Absolutely. I'll tell you about what I call my magic trifecta. Think about the last TEDx talk that you watched that you really enjoyed, or a podcast that you thought was fantastic. Every single speaker that speaks well, who manages to impress you, is playing with these 3 things in the magic trifecta: their voice, their energy, and their body language. They are making sure that they're not monotonous, they're using pauses, not littering their talk with filler words like, like, did that make sense? They're not speaking so fast that you can't really actually catch what they're saying because they're just so fast. So they're really mastering and using their voice as an instrument. They're showing up with the right level of energy. So they're not actually all the way here and showing up with such high energy that they're alienating the audience. And they're not kind of down here where you bring everyone down with you because you had such a long week. And with the body language, there's also that golden ratio, the Goldilocks balance that we want to strike, which you referred to earlier, where we don't want too many gestures. We also don't want repetitive gestures. They are pet gestures that people like using a lot. We want a variation of gestures, and we want to make sure that we're not giving out the wrong signals with the gestures that we're using. For example, using closed gestures, hiding your face when you speak, resting your head for too long, which again makes it seem like you're just waiting for the weekend, using open gestures that show transparency, confidence, openness, using your hands to illustrate things like, we're over here right now, but we really want to get here. Or, last quarter, not quite sure what happened, but the profits took a nosedive. Your body language also includes your expressions. Very often, I work with clients who are so immersed in the words that they're saying, they are so careful about articulating their thoughts that they forget to use expressions on their face. And that's vital because you want the audience to feel what you want them to feel. And the expressions on your face are a psychological indicator for them to get on board, to be on the same page as you. So the voice, the energy, and the body language, the magic trifecta of speaking with impact and confidence.
I love that. And I loved your story about speaking in Japan and how it's like culturally kind of different that they're not going to engage as much as, let's say, a US audience. Um, what are some tips, tricks in terms of how to engage an audience, either through while you're presenting, maybe in a boardroom, or if you're in a Zoom call like this? What are some tips in terms of how do you engage an audience?
Hmm. The very first thing to remember is to engage intentionally. Very often, the worst mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they don't bother engaging. They think of presentations, webinars, masterclasses as one-way lectures, one-way conversations where people are just supposed to listen. Well, that's not happening anymore. One of the things that I observed about you, Lan, at the beginning was that even when you were doing what we could call a monologue at the beginning, you made it a conversation through the way that you were using your voice and through the way that you encouraged us to type in the chat. So, very first principle, think of how you're going to engage your audience when you are creating the presentation, when you are prepping for a podcast, when you are writing the script for your video. And yes, even when it's you on a camera, you can still engage the audience. Think of great YouTubers. They ask the audience questions as if they're having a conversation with you live, even though they're not. They've recorded this months ago, weeks ago. But the way that you can talk and make it conversational, add in a question, ask people to leave you a comment, ask people to engage in the chat, that's what encourages the two-way conversation. That's on the subtle way that you present the information and conduct yourself throughout. And then build in actual exercises, build in questions that people can answer. They can be yes or no questions. You can make them super easy. Has anyone here ever been to a boring webinar? Okay. And then you can make it more interesting. Give me the first 3 things that come to your mind when you think of an impactful speaker. On a scale of 1 to 10, how nervous are you when you have to do a big presentation or a big talk? Vary up the kind of questions and exercises you want the audience to engage in, and then acknowledge them. That's the second mistake I see a lot of people make, where they ask for engagement, but then they don't actually spend any time talking to the audience and having that back and forth with them. They'll just ask them, okay, tell me in the chat, or raise your hand. Okay, great. So now let's move on to the next thing. The audience wants to feel rewarded for having contributed. It's a constant conversation that you're having with the audience. And if you don't pay attention to engaging with them, they're going to tune out. They're not going to keep paying attention. They don't owe you anything. That's the realization that you need to have and take with you.
I love that. And also eye contact. One of the hardest thing for me, especially with Zoom, is that you're kind of just looking like I'm looking at you right now, but I'm not looking. I actually have to consciously remember I'm looking at the camera and I'm giving eye contact to the camera, not who I'm speaking to. So I think little things like that too. And when you're on, I used to be uncomfortable giving eye contact when I was speaking on a stage, but it actually helps to actually look at people, especially people who are like supportive, because there's people who are just like, I hear you. Or sometimes you say something that touches them and you could see them kind of tearing up a little bit. And there's so much power in that connection that I feel like, when I speak, I kind of pretend like I'm speaking to friends, right? And that's very helpful for me, or even getting on stage beforehand. So actually, why don't we open it up for questions right now? Because Malur has a question. Let me, and am I pronouncing your name right, Malur? I've said your name before, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
Okay,
Mallory is fine.
awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. So let's ask your question.
Thank you so much for this presentation. Really useful. Like I said, I've been speaking for many, many years. And even today, every time I go up, I'm always nervous. In 2 days, I have to speak at the Good Tech Fest, and I'm already worried about it. So one of the questions I had was, there's different types of speaking engagements you have. You have obviously the keynotes, or you're doing a technical talk, or sometimes you're doing on a panel, and they all require different. I find that the panel obviously is a lot easier because it's a Q&A type of thing, so it's less stressful for me than going up on stage. And even though I'm an extrovert, I still feel like I'm being judged all the time. So therefore, it's the preparation for that is a lot harder. And going back to the other thing that you talked about, some of the preparatory stuff that you discussed, the exercises. Often I find that it's okay if it's a large conference where you have a backstage, but sometimes there's no backstage and you're still in the public view of the audience, and you can't be doing all this stuff. So, just some comments and, thoughts around those.
Oh, thanks, Fuller.
Warm-ups are something that you could do in a bathroom. That's what I do typically. If I'm wherever I am, if I'm going to go first or whether I'm going to go in the middle or last, I typically excuse myself about 15 minutes before I need to be on stage if possible. And then I have this ritual just like Lan where I make sure that I go to the bathroom, check out my hair, make sure that my clothes are fine. I have actually been on one of the TEDx stages with a little bit of lipstick on my pocket. Not sure how it got there, but it makes me cringe every time I see it, but it's there now. So making sure that you're checking everything that it looks good and then doing the warm up. So I would, I know exactly what you're talking about, that it's not always easy or convenient to get up and go to another space, but it really pays off because think about it in terms of sitting down and standing up. If you've just been sitting down, listening to different speakers, it's very hard to just turn your energy up like that when you need to get up and go on stage. So
Yeah, I
you're,
agree. I mean, usually what I do is just go one of the adjacent rooms, and I'll be
yeah,
talking to myself and try and just go through the motions as if I'm speaking to the audience. So that sometimes works for me.
Yeah.
yeah. And now you can throw in some warm ups to
Yeah,
add
thank
that
you.
to
No,
it.
thank you very much. Just one other follow-up question on that.
Sure.
On as far as the, you talked about engaging the audience. Um, often I see people come up and say, "Hey, how's the weather?" or talk about, some generic stuff. Are there things that you do in terms of icebreakers to warm up the audience, um, that are a little bit less cliched, well,
That's
or less
cliche.
corny?
I do have to say that cliches are cliches for a reason. Sometimes they do work. I do my version of welcoming people and saying hello. So my first, hi, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited to be here. Will always be on that high energy and positive. Typically, if it's a presentation that I'm doing, so not like a podcast or a conversation like this, but my own presentation, I will go straight into a cold open after that and start with my story because most of the presentations that I do are connected to my business. They're connected to doing a masterclass about speaking, helping people speak better. And I like starting with that story because it helps situate me. It also gives me credibility and it shows people where I am, where I come from, why I'm doing what I do. With a cold open, you don't need to do a lot of warming up because you are hoping that the cold open, the story that you're using, will break that ice for you. But you could also go the stand-up comedian route. And again, stand-up comedians all over the world do this in their own way, where they find out what could be an insider thing to make a joke about. They talk about something that everyone can relate to, but is a little bit funny, or they talk about themselves in a funny way. Sometimes they use self-deprecating humor or something else that's funny that happened to them. So you can also step into that role and see if that works with your audience. And I would encourage you to experiment. If you're used to doing one thing, then I would encourage you to change that up for the next 3 times that you speak. Try 3 different things and see how the audience takes it. Ultimately, it's about reading the room and understanding what is the vibe, what's the energy, and can I change it? Or is it going to be too much of a shock?
Those are such great tips, such great tips.
Thank you.
So in terms of like, okay, let's rewind a little bit before we even get on stage, right?
Mhm.
Um, can you discuss how to structure a speech, or I don't know if this is too long of a conversation, or a presentation to ensure that there's maximum impact and retention for the audience? Like, and it could be a topic of anything, but like, how do you kind of structure a speech?
So first, you have to take a step back and start at the end. Figure out what are the key takeaways that you want people to understand and remember. That's the only way that you're going to achieve your goals. Very often, I see people just jump into creating their slides without thinking of what is it that I want people to walk away with? What do I want them to remember? But doing that exercise at the beginning sets you up for success because then you can pull that thread through your presentation. In terms of structuring the presentation, I'll tell you a bit about the process that I recommend. I recommend starting with what I call a brain dump, where I encourage my clients to just write everything that comes to their mind about everything they want to cover. Once we've established what the goal is, just tell me everything that you can think of, both in terms of what you want to educate people on, what you want to entertain them with, what you might want to inspire them with. And throughout the presentation, I want you to think of those three things and aim to switch between them for it to be very engaging. Don't just educate. That's something I see people do all the time, where they get into education mode and they want to make sure that the audience downloads the information from their brain. And that just doesn't happen. If you've educated them a little bit, then go into engagement with the audience to entertain them or to ensure that they're with you and they understand what you've said. If you've done a lot of education and entertainment, see if you can add in quotes that mean something to you. See if you can add memes to make it a little more entertaining. I've had clients do entire sales presentations based on memes, and they've been wildly successful. This requires getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of that zone of, I'm just going to create these slides with the things that I know. They're going to be in bullet points with pictures, and that's what I'm going to show over and over and over. So getting rid of repetition. So that's all of that happens during the brain dump. And then we take the nuggets, the diamonds and raw that are in the diamonds and rough that are in the brain dump, and then we turn it into different segments. And I love encouraging my clients to think of their presentations as modular, because if you can create something which can grow and also shrink if needed, you're doing yourself a favor. You're creating something that can be very adaptive. By modular, I mean, think of different segments that are connected with audience engagement in the middle. And that way, let's say you have 5 things that you talk about in an hour-long keynote, and you have 30 minutes, you can bring it down to 2 without having to make too many changes to the presentation. Only at the 3rd stage, that's where I recommend finally going to the slides. Everything else we've been doing so far is in a Word doc where it's just text. And before you start making slides, I would encourage you to start thinking of what's going to go on the slide and what am I going to say. Another rookie mistake that a lot of people make is that they put everything they want to say on the slide, and then you end up reading from the slides. You are not a message delivery person. You are there to create an experience, which means that the slides are just part of it. And do the email test with all your slides. If you can email your presentation to someone and they can read it and understand exactly what they need to know, then you're not needed. So your presentations should never be standalone. They should facilitate what you're saying. They should be prompts for you, prompts for the audience, but not say exactly what you're going to be saying. And then, of course, once you have the presentations, then you go into practice. Like you mentioned, practice it inside out.
Yeah.
Gives you so much confidence.
Those are such great tips. So because you kind of mentioned, what are some rookie mistakes that you see, people who are, starting their speaking careers make, or, maybe experience with your, what are things that we should be avoid doing? You kind of mentioned it earlier. Anything else?
Practicing. I've seen a lot of people get practice wrong. People think that practicing is just reading your slides. For example, I'm just going to go through my slides and I know them. That's not practicing. I'm going to practice my slides in front of a mirror and that's how I'm going to deliver. Again, that's not natural, because if you're constantly looking at yourself, you're not letting yourself be immersed in the moment. It's very hard to perform and deliver something and really be in the moment when you have your own image staring back at you and you have nothing to review. So the best way to practice that I've seen work over and over again is take your phone, record yourself. It's just for you. If it's cringy to watch, you're the only one who's going to feel the pain. Record your practice, then watch it back and pinpoint things that you're doing well and things you can improve on. Again, a mistake I see a lot of people make is they jump to what can I improve on? What am I doing wrong? I'm doing this wrong. I'm doing that wrong. But you're not actually becoming aware of the things you might be doing well naturally. And how that's detrimental is that then you can't build upon it. Because the closest distance between you and exceptional is working on things that you're already good at. If exceptional is here, you might be naturally good at something and be here. But when something's an opportunity area, you're over there. So you have to go all this way to become exceptional. If you can work on making your strengths stronger, and of course, plugging and addressing the opportunity areas, that's how you become more and more impactful. So watch yourself back, pick 1 to 3 things that you want to work on for the next round, and then repeat. And of course, bring in a coach, bring in a live audience like your partner, your friend, to watch you and give you feedback as well for a very high stakes talk.
I love that. I think we might have time for one more question. I want to read an anonymous question in regards to like sharing PowerPoint decks to like an executive team in a corporate settings. Are you supposed to add commentary on the slides for future use, or what's the right way to present slides for corporations? And I'll just kind of maybe follow up because they didn't answer this, but I think it depends on whether you're creating that presentation for someone else to present, right? Makes a difference, or if you're actually presenting the deck. I don't know if you have any feedback for that. I know it's kind of a little bit vague.
So it's about
like if you're presenting to
you
an
should
executive
add your
team.
own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like do you put the notes in, like the comments in the PowerPoint presentation, or a separate document?
Yeah, so I agree with you. If it's my own presentation that I know won't be seen by anyone else, then I put my notes there. And the idea is to let the slides prompt you as much as possible. Someone else actually has a question about cue cards, which is connected here. Yes, you can use cue cards if there's no other way for you to remember what you need to say. But the best way to do it is to, yes, have your notes in the beginning, but then practice with your notes to the point where you don't need your notes anymore, and make sure that the slide has enough graphics or keywords that prompt you so that you remember what you want to say based on looking at the slides.
Awesome. Okay, last question, because I think I want to leave this on a high note, right? Can you share a story from a client, or maybe your own, of how public speaking or gaining speaking skills has changed someone's life, made an impact on their life? If you can share a story.
Oh, absolutely. We were talking about introverts earlier, and one of the people I worked with was a new entrepreneur. His name is Wes. And when he came to me, he said, Nausheen, I'm launching my business, but I'm such an introvert that getting on a sales call is intimidating for me. And he told me about the last time that he was on a networking call with a community, and he froze. He was asked to introduce himself. He froze, he blanked out, and he quit the call because it was so scary. We started working together. During our sessions, we worked on what is it that's causing that block? How do we make sure that he gets better as he improvises what he's saying? How do we make sure that he's comfortable and relaxed and at ease instead of being so stressed out that it was literally forcing his brain to go totally blank? And now we worked together for about 4 months, and now it's been about 6 or 7 months. He has become so confident that he can go on a Zoom call, he can meet a client one-on-one, and he will be able to tell his story, articulate his thoughts, never get stuck, never go blank. And that has lifted him up out of this phase or zone of feeling like, I can't do this, I'm not equipped to do this, to, yeah, I can handle it. I know exactly how to articulate myself. I know exactly how to show up with confidence. And he now joins some of my group community calls from time to time. And I kid you not, people are drawn to him. People say, wow, you're so confident. How did this happen? And when he says that he had massive, massive stage fright, people actually refuse to believe him. He has had such a huge transformation, and it affects not just his business, but how he shows up as a person.
I love that. And so last question, how can we find you? I know you have a training, paid courses, you can kind of use yourself as a coach. How can we find you and support you and what you do?
Thank you. So I'm always on LinkedIn. So I'm dropping the link in the chat. I'm
And I'll
the
go
only
back on the live
Nausheen.
and share that as well.
Thank you. I'm the only Nausheen Chen on LinkedIn, so pretty easy to find me. And yes, I do have a free course that elaborates on those concepts, that magic trifecta that I talked to you about, your voice, your energy, your body language. It has built-in exercises, and I've had a lot of people who've told me that they just took that free course and they're already showing up with more impact and more confidence. So if you just go to my website, it's called speaking.coach. The free course is there in the free resources. So I'd love for you to take it, give me feedback, and I'm always happy to have a conversation.
I love that. Thank you so much. And so everyone who's on the Zoom call, you know the deal. This is the only one time, because I know there's more than what's on the grid. Turn on your videos, unmute yourself. If you're in the Zoom audience, Nausheen deserves a big round of applause. So you got to turn on your videos and unmute yourself and give a huge, huge round of applause for Nausheen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you so
good
much. That
job.
you have changed
Thank
people's
you.
lives in this. Folks who are watching this, remember, I was in ESL till I was in 5th grade. You know, Nausheen came from Pakistan. I don't care if you have an accent. I don't care if you're an introvert. Use your voice, own your voice. You can change someone's life just like she's changed some of you on this call. Thank you, everyone. Take care. See you next call.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone.